All right, so picture this. Two brothers born into absolute power, destined to rule an empire, but there's a twist. They absolutely despise each other. Sounds like some kind of historical soap opera, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does have that kind of dramatic flair, doesn't it? And it's a story that's captured the imagination of historians for centuries.
It's the story of Caracalla and Geta, sons of the Roman Emperor Septimius Severus. And we've had a lot of requests from listeners to really delve into their lives.
And, thankfully we have some pretty amazing sources to work with. We've got historical accounts from Cassius Dio, Herodian, some later writings, and even archaeological evidence. All those give us a glimpse into their tumultuous relationship.
And that's what we're here for, right? A
Yeah.
deep dive. To get past the surface level stuff and really understand what made these guys tick and the forces that shaped Roman history during their time.
Absolutely. So to really grasp the dynamics at play, we need to go back to the world they were born into. The late 180s AD, the Roman Empire is at a kind of a pivotal point. The Pax Romana, that golden age of stability, it's starting to crumble.
And of course, at the helm, we've got Emperor Commodus, a figure most people probably know from the film Gladiator.
Yeah, a very, let's say, a memorable portrayal. But in reality, his reign was anything but stable. Think paranoia, extravagance, and, well, assassination.
Not exactly the ideal role model for a couple of young princes, huh? So where do Caracalla and Geta fit into this picture?
Well, at this point, they're not exactly in line for the throne. Their father, Septimius Severus, he's a provincial governor in Gaul. Ambitious for sure, but far from the center of power.
So imagine these boys receiving this top-notch education, immersed in rhetoric, philosophy, but all under the shadow of this looming empire.
Yeah.
And then boom, everything changes.
193 AD, Commodus is assassinated,
Yeah.
and it triggers this chaotic, it's called the Year of the Five Emperors.
By 5 emperors in 1 year. That's some serious instability.
It is. A huge power vacuum emerges. You have contenders popping up everywhere. And Septimius Severus, he sees his chance.
He throws his hat into the ring. It's like something out of Shakespeare, this sudden eruption of chaos.
And for young Caracalla and Geta, it's a turning point. Severus, to protect them from being used as, pawns in this deadly game, whisks them out of Rome.
So their lives become intertwined with their father's ambition. It's a huge gamble, isn't it? He's risking everything, not just his own life.
He is. But fortune, as they say, favors the bold. Severus emerges victorious, secures the throne, but the challenges, oh, they're far from over.
So he's got rivals to deal with, power to consolidate. It's a tough job. So Severus, this ambitious figure, now emperor, he brings with him a family shaped by conflict. What happens to Caracalla and Geta during these early years of his reign?
Well, Caracalla, being the eldest, becomes kind of a key player in Severus's strategy. He's named Caesar, the heir apparent, at the age of, get this, 10.
10 years old. That's a lot of pressure for a kid.
It is just a calculated move, designed to solidify the dynasty. But it puts enormous pressure on him. What about Geta, you ask?
Yeah, is he just left out of this whole power dynamic?
Initially, yeah, he kind of remains in the background. But the seeds of rivalry, they're already sown, believe me. The sources describe them as fiercely competitive, even as kids.
So we've got these two brothers growing up in the shadow of their father's ambition, caught in this web of power and rivalry.
And Severus, the master strategist, he knows image is everything. So he promotes this image of family unity, coins, statues, public appearances, the whole propaganda machine. But behind the facade, tensions are simmering.
It's that age-old story, right?
Yeah.
The public face versus the private reality. And this contrast between appearances and the truth seems to run through their whole story. So while Severus is consolidating his power, how are the boys spending their time? Are they, model students of statecraft, or are they embracing the more entertaining side of Roman life?
Let's just say they weren't spending their days quietly studying scrolls. They were teenagers, full of energy, and let's be honest, a sense of entitlement.
Teenagers will be teenagers, emperors or not.
Exactly. And the sources describe them as, well, competitive, reckless, even prone to violent outbursts.
So the rivalry wasn't just confined to the halls of power then?
Oh, absolutely not. It spilled out into the streets of Rome. Think chariot races, each brother backing different factions. This rivalry played out in these dangerous games of speed and power. There's even an account of a chariot crash that left Caracalla with a broken leg.
Ouch. Talk about taking sibling rivalry to the next level.
Yeah, it's a reminder that these were, despite their status, real people
Mm.
with flaws, with passions, and sometimes those passions led them down some pretty dangerous paths.
And I'm guessing Severus wasn't too thrilled about his son's reckless behavior.
No, not at all. Eventually, fed up with their antics and, eager to instill some discipline, he decides on a rather drastic course of action. In 208 AD, he launches a campaign in Britain, and he takes his family with him.
A family vacation to the wilds of Britain. Doesn't sound very relaxing.
No, not a vacation at all. This campaign was about more than conquest. It was about forging unity, forcing his sons to work together in this harsh, unfamiliar environment.
So it's a test, a challenge designed to maybe temper their rivalry and prepare them for the responsibilities of rule.
Exactly. But even in this attempt to unite them, their animosity continues. It's like their rivalry is this unstoppable force.
So even in this campaign meant to bring them together, they're given different roles, further fueling their competition.
That's right. Caracalla, as the heir apparent, is given military responsibilities, leading troops in what's now Scotland. Geta, on the other hand, he's focused on administrative tasks, probably under his mother's watchful eye.
Interesting. So even in trying to unite them, Severus is already shaping them for different paths, perhaps unintentionally reinforcing that sense of competition.
And then, in a move that surprises many, Severus elevates Geta to the rank of Augustus in 209 AD, creating a tripartite rule. And this decision has major implications for the already strained relationship between the brothers.
3 emperors at once. Wow, that's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Talk about a recipe for tension.
Exactly. Imagine you've been groomed for sole rulership your whole life, and suddenly your rival brother is given equal status. It must have been a bitter pill for Caracalla to swallow.
Talk about a power struggle waiting to happen. And before we move on to what happens next, we have to talk about their mother, Julia Domna. Where does she fit into all of this?
Ah, Julia Domna, a fascinating figure. The sources offer some conflicting perspectives on her. She was intelligent, ambitious, and deeply involved in the political machinations of her husband's reign.
So not just a quiet figure in the background.
No, not at all. Some portray her as a peacemaker, desperately trying to, reconcile her sons. Others see her as more of a power player in her own right, maybe even favoring one son over the other.
History is rarely black and white, isn't it? It's these complexities, these hidden motivations that make the story of Caracalla and Geta so compelling.
Absolutely. And as we move forward, we'll see how these complexities play out on an even grander scale. Because, with the death of Septimius Severus in 211 AD, the fragile peace completely shatters. The stage is set for a final showdown between two brothers, each vying for the ultimate prize, control of the Roman Empire.
So Severus is gone. That leaves a massive power vacuum. What happens next? Do Caracalla and Geta try to, share the throne, or does this rivalry just explode into open conflict?
Well, they try to keep up appearances at least. They promote this idea of Concordia Augustorum, harmony between the emperors. You see on coins, inscriptions, that kind of thing. But it's all a very carefully constructed illusion.
So it's a public performance of unity, while privately they're plotting against each other. That's got to create some serious tension. What was it like for them, sharing the palace, the responsibilities of empire, all while looking over their shoulders?
Imagine living under the same roof as your biggest rival, constantly suspicious, never knowing who to trust. They divided the imperial palace, each with their own guards. It was a constant reminder of the danger lurking just down the hall.
It's more like a Cold War than brotherhood. Did anyone try to, mediate between them? What about their mother, Julia Domna? Was she able to play a role in easing the tension?
Julia Domna, as we discussed, she was a complex figure, but she definitely tried to act as a peacemaker. Herodian describes her as, a voice of reason, always urging her sons to reconcile. There's even a story about them considering dividing the empire, ruling separate halves, just to avoid each other.
Wow, a Roman divorce on a grand scale. That would have been a fascinating what-if in history. But they didn't actually go through with it, did they?
No, they didn't. According to Herodian, Julia Domna appealed to their sense of family, arguing that they couldn't divide their mother in two. It's a powerful image, and it highlights her desperate attempts to hold this fractured family together. But ultimately, her efforts were futile.
It's a tragic story. This Family bound by blood, by ambition, ultimately consumed by their own internal conflicts.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that Cassius Dio had a thing for omens and symbolism. Were there any signs, any portents that things were about to take a dark turn?
Dio describes this rather telling incident where senators and priests, they're trying to meet for a sacrifice, for concord and harmony between the emperors, but they get lost in the vast palace. They can't find each other.
It's like the universe itself was foreshadowing the impending disaster.
Exactly. This inability to find unity, even in a ritual meant to promote it, it's a chilling image.
So the tension is building. The omens are bad, and these brothers are like two volatile elements waiting to ignite. What finally sets off the explosion? What pushes things over the edge?
It happens pretty quickly, actually. Less than a year after Severus dies, Caracalla, driven by paranoia, ambition, or maybe both, decides to eliminate his brother once and for all.
A brother killing a brother. It's a tale as old as time, but in this case, it's played out on the grand stage of the Roman Empire. How did he do it? How did he orchestrate this?
According to Dio, he tricks Geta. He lures him into a meeting with their mother, Julia Domna, under the pretense of reconciliation.
A carefully staged peace summit designed not to heal the rift, but to eliminate a rival. Brutal.
It is a betrayal of the most intimate kind.
What happened at this meeting? Did Caracalla confront Geta directly, or was it more clandestine?
The accounts differ a little on the details. Herodian claims that Caracalla, in a fit of rage, he personally attacked and killed Geta. Right there in their mother's chambers. Dio suggests that Caracalla orchestrated the assassination. He signaled to a group of centurions to burst in and kill Geta.
Either way, it's a horrifying act, made even worse by the fact that it happened in front of their mother. Imagine witnessing the murder of one child by another. I can't even fathom that level of trauma.
It's a stark reminder of the human cost of power, how ambition and rivalry can warp even the most fundamental bonds.
And Julia Domna caught in the middle of this tragedy. It's unimaginable.
According to some accounts, she even tried to shield Geta from the attackers.
So Caracalla eliminates his rival, secures his position as sole emperor. But in a sense, this victory is just the beginning of another challenge, right? How does he deal with the aftermath of this act? How does he convince the Roman people, the Senate, the army, that he's the rightful ruler, that the murder of his brother was justified?
This is where Caracalla's true ruthlessness comes into play. He doesn't just seize power. He tries to control the narrative, to shape how people remember the past. He embarks on a campaign of, it's called Damnatio Memoria, condemnation of memory.
Damnatio Memoria. It sounds almost Orwellian. This attempt to erase someone from history. How did this play out in practice?
It was systematic. Statues destroyed, inscriptions chiseled out, coins defaced. Anything that bore Geta's image or name was targeted. He was removed from official documents, his name erased from papyri, as if he had never existed.
It's more than just a power play. It's historical manipulation. It's about controlling the narrative, making sure that his version of events becomes the accepted truth.
Precisely. And this manipulation, it goes beyond physical objects. Caracalla even had Geta's name removed from legal texts, essentially rewriting history to legitimize his own claim to the throne.
Are there any specific examples of this Damnatio Memoria that really stand out, that highlight just how far Caracalla went to erase his brother?
There are many, but one that comes to mind is the Arch of the Silversmiths in Rome. Originally, it had a family portrait: Septimius Severus, Julia Domna, Caracalla, and Geta. But after Geta's murder, his image was completely chiseled out, leaving this very obvious gap.
It's a powerful visual reminder, isn't it? This blank space where Geta once stood, a testament to the brutality of power and the fragility of memory. It's almost like Caracalla is saying, "My brother." What brother? He never existed.
And it wasn't just physical monuments. Think about the impact on the people who knew Geta, who had served with him, who were his friends. They were forced to stay silent, to pretend he had never been a part of their lives.
Enforced amnesia, a collective denial of a person's existence. That's a chilling thought.
And there's one final detail that really highlights Caracalla's cruelty. He didn't deify Geta, which was common practice for deceased emperors. Instead, he performed sacrifices to the manes, the spirits of the underworld, essentially trapping Geta's soul, preventing him from achieving divine status.
Even in death, Geta is denied peace, denied recognition. It's a tragic end to a life marked by rivalry, manipulation, and ultimately betrayal.
And yet, despite this brutal fratricide and the damnatio memoria, Caracalla continued to use imagery and symbolism associated with family and harmony, in his public pronouncements at least.
So he murders his brother, erases him from history, and then presents himself as a champion of family values. That's audacious, even for a Roman emperor.
It is. But remember, Caracalla was a master of propaganda. He understood symbolism, appealing to these deep-seated cultural values even while engaging in acts that completely contradicted those values.
So it's all part of this carefully constructed facade, a
Yeah.
way of manipulating public perception and solidifying his control.
Exactly. And it reminds us that power isn't just about, brute force. It's about controlling the narrative, shaping how people understand and interpret events. And in that sense, Caracalla he was a master manipulator.
A disturbing glimpse into the workings of power, for sure. But the story doesn't end there, does it? Caracalla's reign as sole emperor, it was marked by ambition, but also by instability.
Yes. His story is full of contradictions, military campaigns, ambitious reforms, but also this increasing paranoia and tyranny. His legacy is it's complex, and his reign gives us a unique window into the challenges of absolute power.
Well, I'm definitely eager to explore this next chapter in Caracalla's story to see how he navigates the complexities of rule, the pressures of leadership,
Mm.
and the consequences of his actions.
And in our next deep dive, we'll do just that.
Yeah.
We'll delve into Caracalla's reign as sole emperor, examining his policies, his military campaigns, and ultimately his downfall.
So last time we were talking about Caracalla's reign, it was marked by, these ambitious reforms, but also some pretty troubling signs of instability. Let's talk more about those military campaigns you mentioned. What was he hoping to achieve by waging war, and how did these campaigns shape his image?
Well, Caracalla, he was a warrior emperor. Much like his father, Septimius Severus, he really believed in projecting Roman strength, expanding the empire's borders. And I think his campaigns were driven by, well, a few things. Strategic goals, definitely, but also a desire for glory, and maybe even a need to prove himself, to live up to his ancestors' legacy.
It's that classic story, isn't it? The ruler trying to solidify his power through military conquest. Where did these campaigns take him? What were some of the key conflicts?
His most significant campaigns were in Germania against the Germanic tribes along the Rhine. And in Parthia in the east, he had some success in Germania, strengthened Roman defenses there, secured the frontier. But his Parthian campaign, that one was less successful, and ultimately it led to his downfall.
Let's dig into that Parthian campaign a bit more. What were his objectives there, and why was it ultimately unsuccessful?
Oh, Caracalla had grand ambitions in Parthia. He wanted to conquer the whole Parthian Empire, add its wealth and resources to Rome. So he launches this massive invasion. But his campaign was, it was plagued by problems, logistical challenges, fierce resistance from the Parthians, and maybe, just maybe, a bit of overconfidence on Caracalla's part.
So a case of biting off more than he could chew.
You could say that.
How did this impact his relationship with the army? They'd been a key source of his support, right?
They had. But the army bore the brunt of the hardships in Parthia, the long marches, the fierce battles, the logistical nightmares. All of that took a toll on morale, and Caracalla's leadership started to be questioned.
So the glory of conquest wasn't enough to make up for the harsh realities of war.
It seems not. The soldiers saw his erratic behavior, his cruelty, his disregard for their well-being. They saw the consequences of his ambition and, well, his questionable strategic decisions.
And this discontent, coupled with his increasingly erratic behavior, it created a dangerous situation, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Remember we talked about how Caracalla's reign was marked by these signs of paranoia, cruelty, his demands for loyalty, his tendency to punish even the slightest perceived offense, his unpredictable nature. It created an atmosphere of fear, even among his closest advisors.
So he's alienating the very people he needs to stay in power. That's a recipe for disaster. And of course, that disaster comes in the form of his assassination. Let's talk about that moment. Who was Macrinus, and what motivated him to betray Caracalla?
Macrinus was a Praetorian prefect, basically one of Caracalla's top commanders. He was ambitious, certainly, and pretty shrewd. He recognized that Caracalla's grip on power was slipping. The failed Parthian campaign, the unrest in the army, Caracalla's behavior, it all created an opportunity. An opportunity for someone like Macrinus to make a move.
A classic power play. sensing weakness and exploiting those cracks in the foundation. How did he pull it off? How did he orchestrate the assassination?
Well, according to the sources, Macrinus used a personal grievance as a sort of cover. He claimed that Caracalla had unjustly accused his brother of treason, and he used this alleged injustice to rally support among the soldiers who were already unhappy with Caracalla.
So it wasn't just brute force, it was manipulation,
Mm-hmm.
propaganda, understanding the political landscape.
Yeah.
What happened after the assassination? Did Macrinus just smoothly take over, or was there more chaos and instability?
Oh, there was definitely a power struggle. Macrinus tried to, legitimize his rule. He claimed he was acting to restore stability to the empire. He even took the name Antoninus, hoping to capitalize on the popularity of Caracalla's Antonine constitution.
Smart tactic, using the legacy of the very emperor he overthrew. Did it work?
Not really, not in the long run. Macrinus faced opposition from several different factions, people loyal to the Severan dynasty, people who just resented him as a usurper. He didn't have the charisma, the military experience to really solidify his power. His reign was pretty short-lived.
So Caracalla's assassination didn't lead to a peaceful transition of power. It just triggered another cycle of instability and violence.
It did. And it shows just how fragile power was in the Roman Empire. Even an emperor as seemingly powerful as Caracalla, he could be brought down by internal divisions,
Yeah.
ambitious rivals, and of course the consequences of his own actions.
It's such a fascinating and complex story, full of ambition, intrigue, and tragedy. And it really makes you think about the nature of power, the challenges of leadership, and the enduring legacy of ancient Rome.
It does. And I think a final thought to leave our listeners with is this. Caracalla's story, as violent and dark as it is, it offers some valuable insights into human nature. It reminds us that even those who wield immense power, they're still subject to the same flaws, the same passions, the same vulnerabilities as the rest of us.
Well said. And for our listeners, I think a final thought to ponder might be this. Imagine how differently history might have unfolded if Caracalla had learned to control his impulses, to temper his ambition, to cultivate, wisdom along with his power. Would he have met the same fate? Or would he have left a different legacy, one marked by stability, prosperity, rather than violence and instability? It's a question worth considering.
It is. It reminds us that history isn't just a set of facts and dates. It's a living story,
Yeah.
woven from the choices and actions of countless individuals.
Well, this has been an incredible journey from the power struggles of the Severan dynasty to the complexities of damnatio memoria, ambitious reforms, brutal politics. It's been a fascinating look at a really pivotal period in Roman history.
It has. And I encourage our listeners to keep exploring the rich history of the Roman Empire. There's so many stories waiting to be discovered.
And remember, the past is never truly past. It shakes us, it challenges us, and it offers lessons for the present, for the future. Until our next deep dive, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep questioning.